Which games for Week 13 should you tune in for the 2025 college football season? You guys, it's another tough weekend of games to predict which matchups will be the most impactful to the conference championships or the college football playoff. Regardless of these difficulties, we begin with Kansas State heading to Rice-Eccles Stadium and play the Utah Utes for the first time. We'll see how the Wildcats handle the altitude. Louisville makes a trip to the Lone Star State for an ACC battle with SMU. Can the Cardinals get their first ever win over the Ponies? And one game I'm sure glad is annually back. Oklahoma hosts the Missouri Tigers, and the two get it on for the 98th time. All right, let's dive into some late November games for the 2025 season. Game 1, Kansas State at Utah. These two programs face each other for the very first time. The Utes will be the 9th Big 12 school we've discussed for our SpOp previews for this upcoming campaign. A majority of those programs have a good chance to win the league in Arlington. This is why many in the media attach the wide open conference saying to the Big 12. I think that's because it's a group of teams that haven't played a single down against each other, just like this matchup. Starting with Kansas State, who we've started this series of previews with in Week 0 for their game against Iowa State in Dublin, Ireland. Please consider joining us on Rumble for a watch-along of that contest, and their game in Waco against Baylor. For this one against Utah, the Wildcats have to show up in the trenches. Starting with the offensive line, K-State has two starters coming back, a couple of transfers that didn't get much playing time for their former programs, and one portal pickup that had a good amount of playing time at Penn State. Regardless, they will have the depth if any of these guys don't make it to this November 22nd date. This line should have the potential to protecting Avery Johnson even better than in the 2024 season. Now to the other side of the ball for the Wildcats. How does Kansas State's defense win this game on the road? Well, force Utah to run it. You do that first by enforcing a no-fly zone. This should make it obvious to what you can anticipate on defense. Now you probably are thinking, why the hell would you do that if Utah is a great run team with a stellar offensive line? You guys, if you can take a whole part of the offensive game plan out of the equation, even run-heavy teams will struggle. K-State's secondary on paper looks like they have it in them to accomplish this mission, with VJ Payne leading some guys stepping up and a pair of transfers that had some pretty good numbers with their previous programs. Unlike the offensive line, these cats have to stay healthy, because the next man up won't have the playing experience K-State fans would be comfortable with. Again, you have to win in the trenches, with the offensive line helping Avery Johnson move the chains, and the secondary creating a scenario to overwhelm the home team's pass attack. Gotta force the Utah play calls to just be run, run, run as much as you can. Now to the home team. We haven't gotten a chance to cover the Utah Utes in our SpOp previews, only in some honorable mentions, but if the season goes well for the school out of Salt Lake City, those matchups in the honorable mentions could be elevated to games of the week. Another thing to mention is that this could be the last season for Utah's head coach, Kyle Whittingham. The Utes legendary coach has been with the program since 1994, where he began his time with the Utes as the defensive line coach, then moved to defensive coordinator till he became head coach in 2005 when Urban Meyer left for Florida. Definitely will be an end of an era, as he is the second longest tenured head coach. Back to the 2025 version of Utah. We come into the season with the 37th ranked portal class. Most of the transfers come in at the quarterback, running back, and wide receiver positions, along with a couple of potential starters on the defense. We'll have to see if the pickups will be good enough to have a potent pass attack or complement the defense in the front four and secondary. One of the players from college football free agency is Devin Dampierre. Dampierre transfers in from New Mexico, where he had great production for the Lobos, with almost 4,000 total yards, 31 total touchdowns, 19 of those were on the ground, and only throwing 12 interceptions in 12 games. This might sound crazy, but we might have a sleeper Heisman on our hands here. he is joined by a few other Lobo players out wide and in the backfield. Plus, New Mexico's OC Jason Beck comes in to be the Utes' new offensive coordinator. This is one of those moves from the offseason that could really work out. Another crazy thing is that we haven't even gotten to the best part of the offense, Utah's O-line. That comes into the 2025 season with one of the best offensive linemen, Spencer Fanu, who has been a starter since he stepped onto campus as a freshman, along with Michael Mokofisi next to him at right guard, Darren Kump in at center, on the left side, Tanoe Togiai at guard, and Caleb Lomu at left tackle. These guys last season didn't get enough in return for their pass protection. This made it miserable for Utah's offense and fans. This unit will have less weight on their shoulders this season because of the weapons we just discussed coming in from the portal. Now to the Utah defense, who come into 2025 with 5 starters returning. But this game is in week 13. Ergo, many on the projected depth chart would have been worn in. Just like last season, the Utes defense will keep them in most games. As last year, they only got outplayed in one of those 7 losses. 5 were one-possession games. If everything goes well on offense, and the Utah D can have some lead to defend, the Utes should be in business. Against K-State, stopping Avery Johnson is key to winning. The defense will have played Baylor and Colorado before this. That should give them some practice for a quarterback with some wheels and keeping the gaps tight in coverage. The Utes don't want to get burned by Johnson when you give him no options through the air. Again, the offense needs some quality in the passing game and reward the offensive line and the defense with some points. So, for this matchup in the Big 12, we should see some fireworks from both squads. Just which offense will deliver with drives for points. It will suck if neither of these programs have mid to terrible records before this game kicks off, because I think this contest, like others we have previewed in the conference, could be some excellent football worth watching. Game 2. We are in the Lone Star State for an Atlantic Coast Conference battle. Louisville at SMU. It will be the 4th meeting between the two schools, as SMU last season went up early and the Ponies held on to that lead in the second half for a 34-17 victory. The Cardinals dug themselves into a hole that they just couldn't get out of. Beginning with Louisville, the Cardinals have a couple of things to do if they want to close the distance and possibly win this game. First, the production out wide has to come through like it did in the 2024 game. Lots of options, just who is going to be Miller Moss's go-to this season. Also, if Louisville don't get caught behind again, protecting the quarterback will be a hell of a lot easier. On defense, the Cardinals have to contain Kevin Jennings. They can't let the Ponies quarterback hit home runs on the ground and allow him to extend plays with his feet. The proof of slowing down Jennings are in SMU's losses last season. Got to bring some proper pressure in the pocket, and maybe you'll be rewarded with a mistake that leads to a turnover or just getting the Ponies offense off the field. Again, the offense needs to finish drives, and the defense has to make it uncomfortable for the home team's quarterback. Now to SMU. Kevin Jennings, and give me some more Kevin Jennings. A very impactful player when you aren't up against an elite defense. Jennings had over 3,200 yards passing with 354 rushing yards, 28 total touchdowns, and had 11 interceptions in 11 starts. This contest last season, Jennings punished Louisville with his legs. If the Cardinals can't account for that again, SMU will continue the undefeated record against Louisville. But to be honest to you Pony fans, if your quarterback has to use his wheels, that's not a good sign, because Jennings' most impressive games is when he just has to pass it. On defense, SMU must continue to get penetration in the pocket. Hopefully the transfers work out, as there is a lot of new faces in the D-line. I don't expect the Pony secondary will have a great night, because I think the Cardinals will find holes in their coverage. SMU needs to break up passes where they can and capitalize on any Louisville mistakes. Again, SMU has to give Jennings the time and space to operate a surgical attack, and the defense needs to keep constant pressure on Miller Moss. So, who will win the game that will most likely decide the opponent for Clemson in the ACC championship game? It will probably be a rematch of either of these teams. I would expect this contest to be tighter, as both teams are acclimating to each other for their every year meetings. Can't wait to find out who wins this Atlantic Coast Conference game in Texas. Honorable mentions for Week 13. Begin with Iowa State welcoming the Kansas Jayhawks to Jack Trice Stadium. Will Kansas again ruin a possible ranked team's record towards the end of the season? In the Big Ten, Illinois heads to Camp Randall for a scrap with the Wisconsin Badgers, who will be jumping around with a win in Madison. Another one in the Big 12, Colorado and Coach Prime host the reigning conference champs, Arizona State. Can the Puffs match the Sun Devils in the trenches? Arkansas has a meeting in Austin to battle their old Southwest Conference foe, Texas, for the 81st time. Will the Longhorns make it 2 in a row? The last matchup is also in the SEC and another rivalry. Tennessee takes a trip to the Swamp to clash with Florida for the 55th time. Will the Vols be able to wrangle the Gators? The final game is a classic rivalry that returned last season, Missouri versus Oklahoma. This is the 98th meeting and the second time in the SEC between the two. Last year, it was a sloppy game with both programs contributing 5 fumbles, each school returning a fumble for a touchdown. Missouri captured a 30-23 win and had a backup quarterback starting that victory at home. Hopefully both programs are healthy enough by this part of the schedule to entertain. Beginning with Oklahoma, who we have covered in Week 2 for their massive game against Michigan, Week 4 against Auburn at home, and the last preview was in Week 7 for the Red River rivalry against Texas. For this one, the Sooners, with their new additions that we mentioned and those other previews, have to be lethal. The unit that will allow that to happen is the Sooners' offensive line. If the Hogs can offer some good protection and clear running lanes, Oklahoma will have a great night in Norman. Also, John Mateer should have a bit more speed to evade pressure than last year's Sooners quarterback. If the air raid offense pushes the defensive backs deeper, the Sooners running game will have a lot of space to exploit. We'll see if Oklahoma can set up these pieces on the chessboard to allow this to happen. On the other side of the ball, Oklahoma's defensive line will be key. If they can stuff the run and force Bo Pripula to air it out, because freezing out the ground element will make it tougher for a quarterback that is known more for his feet rather than his arm distribution. Again, the line has to provide some proper protection that grants the offense to slice and dice the Missouri defense, and the D-line needs to stop the run game. This will help to collapse the rest of the Tiger offense. Also, having boomerang Sooner fans will be a great combination to have in this rivalry game. Now to Missouri, who we have to go all the way back to Week 4 since we have talked about Mizzou's game against South Carolina, and we also did their Week 2 matchup against Kansas for the return of the Border War. For this one, it will be interesting to see what the Tigers defense turns into by this point of the 2025 schedule from back to front. The secondary might end up being one of the best in the SEC, with the majority of those players back, along with some studs from the portal. These guys will be complemented by a very scary defensive line that should reproduce similar sack numbers from 2024. And the glue of players that will keep it all together is Missouri's linebackers, with Tristan Newson and the addition of Josiah Trotter from West Virginia. Newson got a sack that led to a fumble for one of those turnover touchdowns. Just a ton of experience that will allow Mizzou to stay competitive in games against great offenses. On offense, the O-line will be critical. If Mizzou wants to be successful for this season and for this game, the big boys in the trenches have to deliver. The Tigers have 2 returners from 2024, left guard Caden Green and center Connor Tullison. They will play with 3 transfers from the portal: Johnny Williams, the 4th from West Virginia at left tackle, Keegan Tross from Wake Forest at right tackle, and Dominic Gadice from Michigan at right guard. This group needs to make the pocket very cozy for Prebola to get the ball out and open up some beautiful holes for Ahmed Hardy. Again, the secondary must execute a no-fly zone to let the Mizzou D-line eat some tackles for loss or sacks. And the Tigers' offensive line has to provide enough time to let Prebola distribute the ball through the air. So, this time around, Mizzou and Oklahoma should be far more exciting than in 2024. Honestly, guys, I'm just glad that these 2 programs are again battling on the gridiron. Now they just need great starts to their season to make this one matter to the postseason. Okay, we'll see you guys again for some more week-by-week previews for the 2025 college football season. And bye-bye for now from the couch.